The journey continues. Today we begin the multi-lecture series on the concept of table lookups, sort of a natural progression from the last topic on conditional statements. When you've got too many combinations to worry about, the if statements become very cumbersome. So the command VLOOKUP was invented to handle these situations, and that's what we're going to look at over the next couple of lectures. Okay, before we actually do some pre-made demos, what I want to do is doodle a little bit on the screen just to give you the concept of this VLOOKUP command we're going to use and why you use it and how it works. So if statements are great, but when you start getting a lot of different things that you have to worry about, so here are, for instance, codes and the costs for certain things, could be products, whatever. If you had to write this as an if statement, you'd have to have one if statement embedded in another one, embedded in another one. And you might say, well, let's use choose, but these aren't nice numbers like 1, 2, 3, so choose wouldn't be a great alternative either. So what was invented was this new concept called the VLOOKUP. And basically what you do with the VLOOKUP is you call this chart a name, okay? We can call it, for the lack of a better name, we can call it table, okay? So you give this chart a name, and then what you do is you have a section where you type in a code, and what you're going to do is tell the special command we're going to do in a second, hey, go over here and find this 7, and when you find it, go over to the next column and tell me what that number is. And then obviously put that number there, so we'd have to write a formula. Okay, so that's the concept of VLOOKUP. So instead of having a whole bunch of if statements, you're going to have this command called VLOOKUP. Okay, and we'll do it formally in a second. And it's going to be consisted of 3 parts. It's going to have this first part where you tell the computer where is this thing you're looking up. So in our first example would be C3. The second thing you do is you tell the computer where you're going to look for this number in C3. So you usually have to name this chart, and we called it table, so I'll write down the word table. The last number is when you find this magic number 7 or 12 or whatever, where do you want to go to find the number? And you usually put a number like column 2, column 3, so we don't want to say column 1 because that's our lookup information. This is what we want to divulge once we get to that number. So we write down a 2. So that's the basic idea of lookup. So look how short and sweet that is. Instead of having complicated if statements, and choose would be all right too if it was nice numbers, but it can't be used in this situation. So this lookup is how we're going to do things now over the next couple of lectures. So now we're going to go through a series of examples to highlight how you would use VLOOKUP in practical applications. And again, a friendly reminder, all these demos are in our resources for today's lecture, and the exercises are also in the resources for today's lecture. They're all compressed, so you have to decompress them, and then you'll have all the examples. So for instance, to start off, we're going to be looking at VLOOKUP number 1. All right, so here's our first example. So if I type in a number between 1 and 9, it'll give me a country code. Now, who decided on these country codes? Well, I have another worksheet where I took all of this information, I named it. Remember how to do naming? You right click and you click on define name. I defined this as country so that I decided that if I press code 7, that means Germany. So let me go back and prove it to you. If I press 7, it becomes Germany. Okay, so that's the neat thing about lookups, and here is the actual raw command, VLOOKUP D3. Okay, that's what I'm typing in the 7. The lookup table, I've declared country, and then when I find what I'm looking for, I go over to column number 2, okay, 1 over from the first column, and pull out those names. Now, if you do stuff and then you go back, oh, what did I call that? I forgot now. Like I wrote this here, you know, very distinctly so you could see it, but if you get to a point where you've done something, then you go, I forget what I called that, you can always go to Formula, Name Manager, and there you will see country. This other thing, print area, is just a default that's automatically in Excel, but this is the one you created. It tells you exactly the location and everything else. One more thing while I'm in the lookup sheet. When you do create your lookup tables, these numbers whatever, have to be in ascending order. Sometimes you can have letters too, okay? You might be able to look up words or whatever, but they have to always be in ascending order. That's really important for the lookup to work properly. This next example, VLOOKUP 2, is not really going to make any sense to you right now, but you'll see how the lookup works. But what this is a precursor to actually the last thing we're going to do in this course. In about 20 lectures from now, we're going to create a budget program where you're going to input the day and the month that you purchase stuff and things like that. So along the top of the chart that we're going to create when we do the budget, there's going to be the days like 1, 2, 3, all the way to 31. And when you type in that you bought something on, let's say, December the 1st, I need to say that that's in column L, if that's where my chart happened to be. And if you bought something on December the 2nd, I need that to say that it was column M. So what this example that we're doing right now does is create a lookup table that matches that to those calendar dates. Now, won't make any sense right now, but those are the days all the way to 31. And these are the columns that I would put those numbers in if I actually had a budget program on my spreadsheet worksheet right now. Okay, so again, nothing spectacular about it. This is all called column. And let's go back to entry. So if I typed in I bought something on the 1st, I would want that to go into column A. If I bought something on the 31st, that would go into column AE. And the lookup formula, pretty straightforward. VLOOKUP D3, the 31. Look it up into column table and go over to column 2 to get the answer. This next example isn't so linear, like nice and easy 1, 2, 3, or 2, 4, 6, or whatever. It's like a range of numbers. So can you do that with VLOOKUP? Yes, you can, but it's a bit trickier. So what you have to realize is, and what we're going to be doing is working out taxes, but it's more important for me to show you this sheet right here. So here is the chart we're looking up. So we're not going to type in exactly 0 and get a 0 or 51. I want it to be a range of numbers. So over here, I've sort of described the range, so to speak. So anything under 51, the tax rate is going to be 0. Anything between 51 and 524, it's going to be 15%. Now look what I write down for that particular one. Okay, anything between 525 and 1124 is going to be 28%. Look what I write there. I'm almost writing always the lowest value. And 1125 and above, I write 1125. So what's going on there? Well, let me hover over this comment for a second. The way VLOOKUP works is VLOOKUP finds the largest number in the first column, which is less than or equal to the value being looked up. So you got to remember that. It's not always, did I find the 7 or the 10 or the 11 in that lookup? Sometimes it describes a range of numbers because I can't write down every single combination. So that's an important rule to understand. So if I typed in, let's say 10 would be less than under 51, obviously, and it would be in this category and I would pay no tax. If I typed in 53, that would be that category. If I typed in 530, that would be that category. And anything above this, 1130, would be this category. So this is a trickier one. Okay, this one, you have to remember this rule about it finds the largest number in the first column of the range, which is less than or equal to the value, okay, being looked up. And then we go back to here. We typed in these gross pays, okay, and this works out the formula according to those gross pays. Did you really get that? Let's practice that one more time, okay, because that is trickier. And but it is powerful, and I want to show you this with grades. And we'll go back over to here. And again, I've declared all this block grades. Okay, I've named it grades. Remember, the letter grades are paired off with the lowest score that earns that grade. Okay, so anything up to, but not including 60. So 0 to 59 is an F. So the letter grades are paired off with the lowest score that earns that grade. So then 60 up to 62, right, would be a D minus. And as we work all the way up, 70, 97, and up would be an A plus. So sometimes you have to understand how this works. And I'm going to give you some practice exercises in a few minutes to practice this trickier version of it. And of course, here we have some sample grades to test it out. Let's change this person's grade to 88. See what he gets now. He gets a B+. Okay, so there is the VLOOKUP. Pretty straightforward, very powerful. It eliminates the need for multiple if statements. Sometimes a choose can come in handy if it's nice and 1, 2, 3, but most of these situations you don't get that anymore. So we would have to resort to the if, which would be really ugly to you, or now this new thing called VLOOKUP. Now, you probably started off pretty good. I mean, you understood what was going on. Then we did those trickier ones near the end. So I really think you should do some practice, okay? I've got a bunch of exercises here that I'd like you to work on. About 3 or 4 of them. All right, it's up to you how many you try. There's 3 good questions there, and they all cover the different ideas that I've covered here. They even go back and use some if statements too, and even some choose. So we're doing a little bit of everything here. We're going to be looking at lookup tables with the VLOOKUP command, reviewing if statements, and choose commands. All right, give this a good try. And what we'll do in our next lecture, at the beginning of it, we will take up all these solutions. Now, as usual, a lot of these already have the solutions in my resources, because I'm trying to be nice to you, but don't look at those answers right off the bat. And maybe even when you look at them, you won't understand them. So I'm definitely going to go through all these solutions with you, but give this an honest try. That's the only way you can get good at this. Remember the bike analogy, okay? You can watch me do this all you want, but until you get on the bike, fall down a little bit, then get up and get used to doing things, you're not going to learn this stuff. And this is really important as we go forward into the more advanced techniques in Excel. See you in the next lecture.